Mercy Lena Brown was born in the year 1872. She was the daughter of George T. Brown and Mary Eliza Brown.
Mercy Brown actually was buried in Exeter, Rhode Island in Chestnut Baptist Cemetery, or Chestnut Hill Baptist Cemetery. She died on January 17, 1892 after a several-month illness. It was running consumption.
That was very prevalent at the time. Consumption, tuberculosis, it was called consumption because it literally consumed the victim. There was no cure for it, no real medical treatment. The townspeople came to George T. Brown and suggested an alternate explanation for this disease, this wasting disease. Their diagnosis was vampirism.
Mr. Brown, actually, George Brown, didn't believe in vampires, but the neighbors and his other people around him were afraid that if Edwin, his son who was ill at that time, died, then they'd probably start feeding on the neighbors. And on March 19th, they actually took her from the tomb and exorcised her for vampirism.
Now, vampirism back then was believed to be something very different than it is today. The connotation was more of a spiritual disease, where a spirit, an undead spirit, would rise from the grave and consume the life forces of the individual.
Well, it didn't take long for Mercy to become the consummate vampire. You know, people said, oh yeah, she was seen, before they exhumed her body, she had been seen leaping across the rooftops of houses and sucking people's blood by biting their necks. So I mean that, okay, she turned into Count Dracula.
Yeah, seriously.
Which is...
before Count Dracula was even created.
Speaking of that, weren't there, we've brought this up, but weren't there papers found in Bram Stoker's?
That's an interesting idea.
Now, of course, the press got wind of this, local tellings of it, and they called it a horrid superstition that people in Exeter were actually still condoning this practice. So word got out to the local Gazette and eventually to the Providence Journal and even to a New York paper.
From what I understand, the story did get picked up by some European newspapers. And from what I understand, people going through Stoker's papers after his death found clippings from European papers detailing the Mercy Brown story.
Now, Bram Stoker, when he wrote and published Dracula, his famous novel Dracula, about the famous vampire story, in 1897, there were papers found among his possessions where he actually did research on the Mercy Brown case.
Some people want to say that one of the women in Dracula was based on Mercy Brown. I'm not really buying that, but he does seem to have been aware of the story.
Now you notice it says Mercy L. She actually preferred to go by her middle name, Lena. Her friends knew her as Lena Brown during her lifetime. It's believed that the character of Lucy was based upon Mercy Brown and the way that the vampire hunters dispatched of her.
Some people have claimed that the Mercy Brown story, as it appeared in the newspapers, was influential in Bram Stoker's creation of Dracula. And the time was right. 1882 was the Mercy Brown story. The Dracula was published in 1896. He did have a copy of an 1896 newspaper article from the New York Herald that recapitulated the Mercy Brown event. Unfortunately for that theory that it influenced his creation of Dracula, his first draft, a smooth draft of Dracula, was already completed by the time that article appeared in the newspaper.
Oh, okay.
So it probably had no effect whatsoever on the creation of Dracula.
Are there any references in the book Dracula to any towns in Rhode Island or any names or anything like that?
You know, I don't remember any.
Okay.
I haven't looked for them, but...
It could be later in the book. I have never been able to finish Dracula. I can get about halfway through before I give up. It's a wretchedly written book, and I can't get through it. There's another DVD extra for you.